Hey, welcome to the Fireside Tattoo Network. My name is Jake, and this is 3 Minutes to Better Tattooing. Today, we're going to talk about using white ink over healed black ink to knock it back, whether or not it's even effective, why you might do it, and I have a real-life experiment from a tattoo of mine that I did a couple of years back, and we get to see it kind of settle in, and you get to make the decision on whether or not it worked, which is fun. Yeah, I've been watching YouTube videos with Max, with my 10-year-old, and all the YouTubers that he watches, they start their videos like, "What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about sick tats, so make sure to ring that bell. And if you don't think 45-year-old men should be saying sick tats, then let us know in the comments." What does ring the bell even do? Does anyone know? Isn't it just like subscribing, or is it different than subscribing? Do you ring the bell and subscribe, or just one or the other? If you know the answer to that, leave us a comment. All right, let's get to this episode. So I'm going to kick it off here. Unfortunately, I don't have much video of this. Since I did this tattoo a couple of years ago, somehow the video has all kind of either been deleted or it's on an old hard drive or something. But here's what I got. I got some still shots. This is what he came in with. This band, outer arm, and then here was the inner arm. Pretty dark. It was pretty heavy, pretty saturated, and a little bit scarred around the coexist lettering. It was somewhat raised. Luckily, the rest of the band was not raised. And originally, I didn't have to deal, or I didn't think I was going to have to deal with that tattoo. We were just going to do this kind of shoulder cap over onto a chest, and we were just going to like drop it straight into the existing tattoo, and so I wasn't going to have to deal with it at all. Of course, as soon as we start the first block-in sitting for the black and gray, the client, Jeff, mentioned that he might want to cover the band and move past it. So you can tell that I dropped short of actually touching the band in this first session. I let it fall short because I thought I might need some of that space on the top side of the band if we were going to move down his arm. And that painted me into a little bit of a corner, just because if I had planned for the full arm or for a 3/4 sleeve to begin with, I would have addressed this differently. But since I had already planned for this kind of shoulder cap piece to end right at that band, it caused a little bit of trouble trying to figure out how to like work up into it. So we ended up going with hammerhead sharks, which I thought worked pretty well because I knew to cover that band I was going to need some big, beefy, kind of chunky shapes, and I thought the head of a hammerhead I could kind of like break that shape in half and do away with the horizontal, or at least break up that horizontal of the band a little bit. And so you can see here that that's what I did. Here's my first block-in session on the lower arm, and I kind of set the head of the shark at a 3/4 angle so that it intercepted the band a little bit, and I went and I scrubbed in the head pretty well in just straight blacks and some gray washes. And then you can tell here, this is straight white over that black band when it's fresh. So this is what it looks like at the end of the session when it was fresh, and it looks like that white packed right over the top of the black. Now, we all know if we've been tattooing a while that it doesn't hold that way. It's not actually going to look like that, but it does affect it somewhat. It will knock it back. That white pigment sits right in there with that healed black pigment, and it does mute it. It does knock it back, maybe 15-20%, something like that. And then here it is healed, and you can see it held a little bit. It looks, it's obviously it's dingy. It doesn't look great. But what I did here in this second sitting is I've got the healed white that went straight over the top of the black, and it's kind of splotchy, but it did knock the black back a little bit. And then I went in between on either side of the band, and I mixed just kind of a medium opaque gray, and I kind of lightly washed that in. I didn't pack it in super solid, but what I'm trying to do, it's almost like preparing a ground for a painting or something like that. If you were to, people use like a raw umber or something like that to tone a canvas so they don't have the white of the canvas, just so they have a consistent background that when they paint everything, that atmosphere of that background color kind of comes through. That was kind of my thought process here, is I didn't want the skin tone in between the two black bands to be super bright and light. So what I'm trying to do is just get all of that background stuff as close as I possibly can. And obviously I didn't spend a ton of time on it. I packed that white in as best I could, and then I went through with that gray and kind of approximated that medium healed tone of the white over the black, and that's what I came up with. Here is the before of the inner arm, and this is how I handled it after and healed on the inner arm after the grayscale, before we started with any color. And so you can see the same thing here. If you look on the top of the bicep, I packed that white up against the compass And then where the compass intercepts the cover up, the band, I kind of use this shadow shape. And I saturated it pretty dark black. So I'm just trying to break up that shape as best I can before we get to color. And then here, this is some of the only video that I have, but this is about 2.5 years healed. I didn't want to put, I actually intentionally held back on this video because I didn't want to put this out whenever the color was fresh. I didn't want to put it out when it was freshly, 6 months after healed or 6 weeks after healed. I really wanted it to settle so we could see what it does in the real world. And so this is about 2.5 years settled, and it's a little bit rough in the background. What you can tell here is that I used a blue, kind of a teal or turquoise blue in the water, and then I went in with like a warmer tone over the blacks on the hammerhead's head. So I let that black heal, and then I went in with this is probably like a dark magenta or a brick red or some combination of magenta and red, so that I used a warm black to push forward in the shark's head, and then I used a cool blue over the band and the cover up, hoping to create even more separation. So every little time that I went at this thing, I tried to chip away and push and pull a little bit more. So the first time just packing straight white over the band, the second time approximating that medium gray and laying it in the skin so that it softened the edges of the band. And then in the color sessions, trying to use a warm black in the shark's head and a cool blue in the water, background water, so that I could create even more separation. And you can tell, I'll go back through a few more still shots of the healed tattoo here. There are still some issues. It definitely is heavy, it's dense on the bottom part of the arm and too light on the top part of the arm. That separation I don't love. We're working on a full back piece now, and I've had a couple of years for this to settle in, so we are going to go back through it and see if we can even that out a little bit or balance the dark and light shapes. And I'll make sure to give an update whenever we actually do that. I know this was way longer than 3 minutes. Thank you guys so much for supporting what we do, and we'll see you next time.